Welcome everyone to Behind the Scenes podcast series brought to you by Kalari Capital. Today I have Akrit Vaish, CEO of Haptic, one of the largest conversational AI platforms, joining me to share his learnings and insights on scaling a company and many other topics. Akrit, welcome to Kalari podcast. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today.
Yeah, no, thanks so much, Vani, for having me here. I'm super excited. And looking forward to this, to the next hour or so to discuss a lot of what we've done.
Akrit, I remember when I had first met you, and you were very, very early. I would call you a pioneer in the whole space of conversational AI. I think you started back in 2013. And sometimes being a first mover is an advantage, and at other times not. So, how do you see, in your case or in general, your thoughts on being early to market?
Yeah, so look, I'm obviously going to be very biased given the journey we've had and the learnings we've had. Um, but it's such an interesting question to start with, Vani, because one of the things I talk about a lot now with my team or with other founders, or even as I think about for myself, businesses, ideas, products. There was um, Idea Lab is an incubator in LA. Bill Gross is the famous founder.
Yeah.
And about 3 or 4 years back, while we were in the middle of figuring out a lot of things with Haptic, I remember I was just kind of one day on YouTube seeing one of his presentations on one of the demo days, and he basically asked the entire audience of like some thousand odd people that, hey guys, I'm going to put 5 things on the slide, and you need to tell me what is the most important factor in getting a startup business right. And he said this is basically based on data of what we've collated across our portfolio, hundreds of companies, and we looked at every company and we saw that what was the major driving factor. And he put down like I think 5 things, which included team, capital, market size, market timing, or idea. There we go. Idea, team, capital, market size, and the timing of the actual idea. And he came out with saying that our surveys and our data suggest that the number one thing that influenced large companies was actually the timing.
Hmm.
And to answer your specific question, ever since then, this has resonated with me so much because of what we went through at Haptic, right? To your point, back in 2013, we felt that we were pioneering an industry. I don't think I would do that again. I think, and the only reason is, um, sure, at the end of it today, 7 years later, it feels like, okay, good, great. You were part of the part of the few who made the industry. But if people not being ready for a certain product or technology is as bad as people not wanting it at all. Like at least that's what my take is. Like people want something when they want it, not people want something when you are trying to give them something. So I think as we think about, or as I think about products or businesses today, I this is like the number one thing that I think about every single time, which is this product or business right for the customer today or in the next 12 to 18 months while this goes out.
Well, still, having said that, you haven't done badly at all, right? You are personally considered a leader in the space, and Haptic is, one of the largest players in conversational AI. So, despite challenges for a pioneer leading from the front, you have managed to scale, which sometimes companies
Yeah.
don't. And for me, having observed you, I think it comes with your acumen to make the decisions you need to make at any given time with maturity and with pragmatism. So but I want to understand from you how you have managed to scale, and what has been sort of the learnings and scars you incurred along the way.
Yeah, I think when you're trying to invent a new category or being a pioneer, as you put it. I think the meaning of the word persistence takes a whole new, different dimension. See, entrepreneurship, whatever you probably have seen this many more times than anybody else, is a game of persistence, right? You just have to keep trying, keep trying, keep going at it. But especially when trying to build something new, which people may not know or investors may not be familiar with, like I said, it takes on a whole different meaning. I think for us, one of the things, particularly in the early days, we tried to do was we tried to basically have this mindset of ensuring that we continue to stay in the game. Like, at least for us in the first 3 to 4 years, it was a lot just about that. And I know this sounds contrary to what a lot of others may say, that you play the game to win the game. I think for us, because it was all so new, so early, nobody understood it. The whole idea was, as long as we can stay in the game, as long as we can ensure that we're doing okay, we're surviving, we're growing, we're putting the right team together, that inflection point will arrive at some point, you know. And that, for at least the category as a whole, happened about 3 years back, where all of a sudden, not all of a sudden it was happening, but basically it reached a point where enough businesses, enough brands felt that this technology could really help them with improving, whether it's their customer support, whether it's their internal operations, and so on. And that's when, and I remember you telling me this long time back, when right? When you know that it is now starting to turn, because there's enough, you have more to do that you can chew. And That's what started happening. So I think I like to break this up in, like, sort of, well, there are actually 4 phases, but broadly the 2 phases is, one large one is just staying in the game, continuing to do some things, experiment with products, continuing to keep costs low, ensuring that you have enough runway to keep doing your experiments. And then at some point when it starts turning, then really pushing the pedal on it, right? Then really saying that, look, now is the time to scale, and now is the time to really rapidly scale, which is right about the time when we, partnered with Reliance.
Akrut, that brings me to a different question. M&A, right? The elephant in the room. I say that because oftentimes investors are more open to consider an M&A. Founders at times think of that somehow as a failure of their dream and vision. And media doesn't help because they paint it somehow as a cop out, Yet you have successfully grown your business post M&A. So talk about how and when a founder should reconcile with the idea of M&A, and more importantly, how sometimes that could be a path to truly achieve your vision.
Lots of questions in there, and as you can imagine, something I've deeply thought about a lot over the years. Let's see, right? So I think, well, let's back up a little bit, right? Till about 5 years back, and I know you used to be the most vocal, you used to be very vocal about this thought, which I remember that you used to tell all of us founders. Till about 5 years or 6 years back, the whole notion of M&A in India was very lacking in the first place, right? There was not, you didn't have, the Flipkart had just about seen light of the day, but you didn't really have the homegrown Googles or Facebooks. It's now happened. And you didn't have the older companies like the AT&Ts or Verizons also become very active yet, right? And then all of a sudden, sort of 5 years back, both of these things started happening. You now have enough large decacorns or so that are doing so many acquisitions, and then now companies like Reliance and Tata and Times of India, for that matter, are also acquiring. So again, when we did our when we were acquired, or when sort of the Reliance deal happened, we were again early to that whole idea itself, right? Like, we were, I think, the second or the third acquisition that Reliance made in the entire tech ecosystem. Broadly, if you look at from an India perspective, we were amongst maybe the top 10 or 15 acquisitions ever done in the space again. And that doesn't speak so highly, because it was just, there were not that many. any investment or acquisition fundamentally starts out like a partnership, right? Like it's always like, do you see eye to eye with the person that you're going to be doing business with? And when we thought about this, and when the whole Reliance opportunity came along, we weren't actually actively thinking at that time of, um, you know, uh, selling majority. We were still thinking about how to grow the business through capital and so on. And when it came along, it felt like there was something that they were trying to do over here, which would help us see our vision a lot sooner and a lot faster than if we were to do this on our own. And then we looked at some examples that existed not in India. So if you think about what Instagram and WhatsApp have been able to do being part of Facebook, or what YouTube has been able to do being a part of Google, these are very common examples, but there are many others, right? We spoke to a lot of people, friends and colleagues of mine back in the valley, and investors and others over here as well, that look, how do we think about these things? And I think um, I remember one person telling me this, that you know you can think about it like an exit or a start, but it all depends on how you want to think about it, right? If you think about it like an exit, then it'll be an exit, then you will not be able to do much, then even externally it may seem to others that it was a cop out, for the lack of better words, and then that's what it will become, and you'll stick around and leave. But if you think of it like a start, right, and if you think of it that this is a new opportunity to really try and build and grow the business to become as large as it can, then hopefully everybody will see it that way, and you will be able to do something interesting with the business. So that's when we took the call. I think Reliance was very, very clear that they wanted to run this, or have this run as an independent operation. They put down a lot of things on paper and otherwise to say that we want you to succeed and we want you to realize a vision, and as long as you do, there is enough in this for you to make it worth your time over the next 2 years. Yeah, and then the rest is history, as they say.
No, we are having this conversation, which is also new to me, because while Kalari was an investor with Haptic and we were very proud of you as a founder and working with you, we had sold our shares to Times Internet. And of course, subsequently, when you sold to Reliance, it was news to us in the paper as it was news to anybody else. So we can't claim any credit, for that. But I'm really glad to see you thriving and building this at scale. And I think more M&As will happen in the country. I kind of want to come back to Haptic, but I want to switch for a moment to your emerging evolving role. Of course, you're running a large scale cutting edge business, and you've done really well as a founder from your own personal growth, but you're also wearing a hat of encouraging other founders and supporting the startup ecosystem. So from that vantage, what really interests you when you see an emerging startup opportunity?
No, absolutely. It's a great question. I think, much like most people who start making early stage investments in startups, it was accidental, where essentially a couple of people I knew were starting something, doing something, and I felt like I wanted to be a part of that journey. Um, so yeah, so it's been it's firstly it's a great time. We outside of what's happening obviously today or right now across the country from a healthcare perspective, from an opportunity and a internet perspective, there's obviously no better time to build a business in India that has been over the last few years. So as a result, friends, colleagues, ex-colleagues, people who we just come to know through the ecosystem, founder network as part of the Kalari group, all of those folks, whenever they're trying to start out something, we just end up sort of chatting, right? That how are they doing it, and if there's any ways and I can help. We all know this. The entire tech community is super connected, and I think very helpful in being willing to reach out and just sort of brainstorm on ideas. So that's how some of this started. Um, And now been actively involved and investing in a fair number of companies. What do I look for? I think coincidentally, Mani, about half of them end up being people who I just know in general, right? So like there are at least 4 or 5 ex Haptik people. There's 4 or 5 ex fellow founders who we've just been in touch with so many years. There's others who were working somewhere else who I had interviewed, and then we weren't able to make it work. So half of them just end up being an extended network. And if you've known the person for a long enough time, and you believe that they are going to build an interesting and exciting company at some point, that really is 90% of sort of the conviction, which is just the person or the team, or who they are and what they're trying to do. For the remaining folks who I may not know from the past, I think most of these end up starting out just being like, hey, let me see how I can help. Are there areas you're struggling with? Are there people you want to meet? Are there things that you want to brainstorm with? And a lot of these end up starting at that. And then after that, there are broadly sort of 3 or 4 things that I ask myself the question before making a decision whether to end up helping somebody or investing in somebody. One is that how well does the founder actually understand the problem statement in the market? Like, are they really glued to it, or is this something that came just as a thought otherwise? Second is timing, like I mentioned to you, because I have sort of seen that myself. So just, is this ready for it today? And then the third is the larger market opportunity. I think one of the things with you asked about scale, right? I think I'm very clear that anything I want to be involved with now needs to be really, really mega scale. Like or it has to have the potential to be that. If it doesn't, that's fine. I mean, and same thing with Haptik, right? We could still blow it up, but the idea is that at least theoretically there should be an opportunity to see something at massive scale. So that's the third thing that I look for.
So, Akrut, if you had one piece of advice that either you wish you had, say 2013, or one piece of advice you really want to pass on to founders that are listening, what would that be?
God, there's so many. So many things I've written to my younger.
That so many will be a book interview I'll do with you when you write the book.
To my younger self at so many different points. I think it may sound very mundane, very trivial, but this is specifically to my younger self, right? The fundamentals of a business are always the same, no matter what business you're trying to do. Mm-hmm. And that fundamentals of business are revenue and profitability, right? Don't lose sight of that. I think this whole idea, where we started which was, no, we'll build technology, we'll figure out how to monetize. That is not true. I think that is fiction. I think I would encourage my younger self and every single young entrepreneur today that whatever you do from day one, don't forget about the fundamentals. They may happen at a different time. You may go about doing them differently, but the fundamentals of at least building a for-profit venture-backed company will always remain the same.
Awesome, Akrut. This was fascinating and fantastic. So really good.